Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sleep Space. Tonight, we're going to talk about something that reaches into the very heart of what it means to be conscious, alive, and part of this strange and beautiful universe. Is the universe a mirror of your mind? The ancient phrase, as above, so below, suggests a symmetry between the cosmos and the self, between the structure of galaxies and the architecture of thought. But is that just poetry? Or is there something more? Could the cosmos be reflecting your inner world, just as your thoughts reflect the vastness of the stars? Before we begin, I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from, and what time is it where you are? Whether it's dusk, midnight, or dawn, let your mind settle as we gently explore the deep connections between consciousness and the cosmos. Let's start with what this idea really means, that somehow what's out there is also in here. That maybe the structure of the universe, its laws, its patterns, its apparent design, is not separate from you, but entangled with your own awareness. To even begin asking whether the universe mirrors the mind, we have to look at what both of those things are. So let's start with the universe. For much of human history, the universe was seen as a mechanical thing, a grand machine of matter and motion, indifferent and impersonal. From Newton to Einstein, we built equations to describe its workings: gravity, space, time, mass. The cosmos seemed like a cold, objective space that went on forever, whether or not we were here to observe it. But something happened in the 20th century that shattered that certainty: the rise of quantum physics. In the quantum world, observation is not passive. The mere act of measuring a particle can change its behavior. Electrons don't have fixed locations until they're observed. Light can behave like a wave or a particle, depending on how we look at it. This isn't just weird, it's revolutionary, because suddenly the mind re-enters the picture. The observer matters. This doesn't mean you control reality with your thoughts, but it does mean that consciousness can't be completely separated from the cosmos. The old boundary between mind and matter starts to blur. Even Einstein, who disliked the implications of quantum mechanics, had to reckon with the fact that our act of observing reality is deeply woven into what we end up seeing. He once asked, "Do you really believe the moon is not there if you're not looking at it?" Quantum physics says, in some cases, maybe not. So let's pause and really think about that. If the universe only reveals its state through interaction, through observation, then isn't your awareness part of the equation? If your consciousness plays a role in shaping how the universe appears, then maybe it's not just a stage on which life plays out. Maybe it's a kind of mirror reflecting something internal. Let's bring in another ancient idea, that the microcosm reflects the macrocosm. Your brain, for instance, is made up of around 86 billion neurons. That's an incomprehensibly large number. And yet, when we look at simulations of the structure of the universe, the way galaxies are distributed across space, they bear an uncanny resemblance to neural networks. Webs of energy, nodes of complexity, clusters and voids. This isn't just a metaphor. A 2020 paper published in Frontiers in Physics compared the observable universe to the structure of the human brain. The researchers found that both systems distribute information in shockingly similar ways. The energy content of the cosmos and the complexity of our neural architecture show matching degrees of organization, and they suggested this might hint at universal principles of self-organization, whether in neurons or galaxies. In other words, the mind and the cosmos may be built from the same logic. That's a big idea, but let's ground it. Because it's easy to drift off into mysticism, And what we're really asking here is something very practical. What is the relationship between consciousness and reality? And more specifically, does your internal state influence the outer world? Now let's talk about perception. Your experience of the universe is not the universe itself. It's your brain's interpretation of signals. Light waves hit your retina, get converted into electrical signals, and are processed into an image. Sound waves become vibrations in the ear, transformed into meaning. Even time is experienced through your brain's encoding of changes. What this means is that your entire experience of reality right now is a construction, a beautifully orchestrated simulation. So, where exactly is the line between what's in here and what's out there? This is where the idea of the universe as a mirror becomes more than just a philosophical metaphor. Because if reality is filtered through your awareness, and if your thoughts can influence what you pay attention to, then, in a very real sense, your inner world shapes your outer experience. Consider attention. When you're focused on something, say looking for red cars, you start seeing them everywhere. That's not because they suddenly appeared, it's because your brain began tuning into them. This is the reticular activating system at work, a network in the brainstem that filters information based on relevance. What you focus on literally determines what reality reveals to you. So when you change your mind, you change your experience of the world. Now imagine that principle operating on deeper and subtler levels. Emotions, beliefs, expectations, these also shape perception. When you're afraid, the world appears more threatening. When you're in love, the world feels more alive. Your internal state filters external data. This doesn't mean you create the universe out of nothing, but it does mean the version of the universe you live in is deeply influenced by you. So let's bring it back. If consciousness affects observation, and observation influences reality, then isn't the universe, at least in part, a reflection of your awareness? This is not New Age thinking. This is supported by the foundational ideas in quantum mechanics, neuroscience, and systems theory. Let's look at Carl Jung's idea of synchronicity. He suggested that meaningful coincidences arise when inner and outer worlds align. Not just random events, but patterns that feel charged with significance. Modern science can't yet measure synchronicity, but psychology and subjective experience say it matters. And that feeling that somehow the universe is responding to your inner state is one many people share, especially in moments of clarity or transformation. Could this be more than emotion? Could it point to a feedback loop between mind and cosmos? There's a concept in physics called the holographic principle. It suggests that the universe can be described as a kind of projection, that all the information in a 3D space can be encoded on a 2D boundary. Think of a hologram. Every piece contains the whole image in some way. Some physicists believe reality itself might work this way, that the universe is fundamentally information-based. If that's true, and consciousness is a pattern of information interacting with itself, then maybe the mind and the cosmos are not separate entities, but different expressions of the same informational substrate. As above, so below. Here's a strange detail. When physicist John Wheeler proposed participatory anthropic principle, he suggested that observers are not just passive in the universe's story, they're necessary. The universe needs observers in order to become real in certain ways. In this view, the cosmos didn't just birth life, life helps bring the cosmos into focus. Consciousness isn't a side effect, it's part of the machinery. This doesn't mean you personally manifested galaxies into being. But it does mean that awareness is not incidental. It may be fundamental. So we arrive at this paradox. The universe is unimaginably vast, and yet it might only exist meaningfully when a conscious mind interacts with it. Your mind, tiny as it may feel, is part of that vast system. A mirror, not because it copies, but because it reflects and responds. If the brain resembles the cosmos, if consciousness alters perception, and if observation affects the quantum world, then perhaps you are not simply in the universe. Perhaps you are also a participant in shaping what it is. Let's begin with something deceptively simple. Patterns. Patterns are everywhere. In snowflakes, in spiral galaxies, in brain waves and bird migrations, in the movement of the stock market and the swirl of water down your drain. But what makes a pattern more than just repetition? What if these cosmic and cognitive patterns aren't just coincidentally similar, but arise from the same underlying laws? The universe tends towards symmetry and balance. It favors elegance. The equations that describe gravity or electromagnetism are often surprisingly simple, as if nature prefers beauty. And it turns out, so do you. Human cognition is hardwired to find symmetry pleasing. Faces, landscapes, even melodies, all are more likely to be perceived as beautiful when they follow harmonious patterns. But this alignment goes beyond aesthetics. It goes into how your brain actually makes sense of reality. Your mind doesn't process the world in full resolution. It's bombarded by millions of bits of information every second. It would be impossible to consciously sort through it all. So your brain builds predictive models. It constructs internal simulations based on patterns it has previously encountered, and uses those simulations to guide your actions, emotions, and thoughts. This process is called predictive coding. Your brain constantly tries to guess what's going to happen next, what someone's about to say, where that moving car will go, how that sentence will end. Most of the time, those predictions are right. When they're not, you feel surprise, confusion, or even fear. This same principle, believe it or not, shows up in physics. Many theoretical models of the universe, including quantum field theory and string theory, rely on symmetries and predictions, mathematical ways of mapping how reality unfolds across space and time. And when the predictions fail, physicists look for a deeper symmetry, a more elegant equation, something closer to the truth. Both your mind and the cosmos seem to operate on a logic of pattern recognition, prediction, and refinement. But let's go even deeper. What about time? You experience time as linear, one moment after another, past, present, future. But physics doesn't describe time that way. In fact, in Einstein's theory of relativity, time is relative to the observer. It stretches and compresses depending on speed and gravity. For someone near a black hole, time slows to a crawl. For someone moving close to the speed of light, time almost stops. There is no absolute now. This undermines the idea that time is some universal clock ticking away. Instead, time is woven into space itself, a dimension that bends and warps. So now we return to the question: if time isn't absolute but subjective, then what creates the feeling of its flow? Consciousness. Your brain strings together moments into a coherent story. It remembers the past, anticipates the future, and binds the present into an experience. In this way, consciousness creates the illusion of linear time. But it's more than just illusion. It's the way your mind navigates entropy. Entropy is the tendency of systems to move from order to disorder. It's why heat flows from hot to cold, why buildings crumble over time, and why you remember the past but not the future. Entropy gives time its arrow. And yet, when you dream or when you imagine, time behaves differently. You can jump forward, rewind, loop. The mental experience of time doesn't always match the physical. This disconnect raises a strange possibility that time, as we live it, is partly a construction of consciousness. This isn't a mystical idea. It's supported by neuroscience. Your brain doesn't record time directly. It constructs it from changes and perceptions. This suggests your inner sense of time may not reflect objective reality, but a kind of internal synchronization system. So what if the universe has its own version of time, not a ticking clock, but a deeper kind of unfolding? In many cosmological models, the universe began in a state of extreme order, the Big Bang. From that point forward, it has been moving toward greater complexity and greater entropy at once. Stars formed, galaxies spun, planets emerged, life appeared. All of it directed by physical laws that, as far as we can tell, have remained constant for 13.8 billion years. But why? Why do these laws work? Why does gravity exist? Why is there something rather than nothing? This is where the mirror analogy begins to press up against the limits of understanding. Because when you examine the laws of the universe, they seem fine-tuned. A little more gravity and the universe collapses. A little less and nothing forms. The charge of the electron, the strength of the strong nuclear force, the mass of the Higgs boson, all these values seem arbitrary, and yet precisely what's needed to allow matter, complexity, and ultimately, life. Some physicists call this the anthropic principle. We observe a universe that allows life because only such a universe could be observed. Others argue for the multiverse that ours is just one of many, and we happen to live in the one that works. But there's a third possibility, one that is much harder to test but fascinating to consider, that consciousness is not just a product of the universe, but a defining element of it. That the universe is not merely fine-tuned for consciousness, but by it. Let's take a closer look at the foundations of physical reality. In quantum physics, the observer effect challenges the idea of objective reality. In many interpretations, particles don't have definite properties until measured. The classic double-slit experiment shows that light behaves differently depending on whether it's observed. This brings us to a startling realization that measurement, a form of observation, which can only occur through some conscious interface, determines the state of physical systems. The most radical interpretation is called the consciousness causes collapse model. It suggests that the wave function of a quantum system collapses into a definite state because it's observed by a conscious entity. This idea is controversial, but it continues to intrigue physicists and philosophers alike. Because if it's true, even slightly true, then your mind isn't just watching the universe, it's participating in its creation. Imagine that for a moment. Every time you perceive something, you're shaping it. Not with your beliefs or desires, but simply through awareness. This doesn't mean you're manifesting furniture or conjuring galaxies. But it might mean that the clarity, structure, and coherence of reality depend, in some small way, on your participation in it. Now let's pivot to something more personal. Have you ever noticed how your emotional state changes the world around you? When you're anxious, the world feels threatening. When you're content, it feels peaceful. This isn't just mood, it's perceptual filtering. Your brain changes what it notices based on your internal state. Faces look more or less friendly, noises more or less alarming, even colours seem brighter or duller. This is more than psychology, it's neurobiology. The limbic system, responsible for emotion, feeds directly into the sensory cortex. That means your feelings change what you see and hear. So here's the key insight. Your inner world literally shapes your experience of the outer one. If that's true at the individual level, could it also be true at a cosmic level? Let's look at a field called Panpsychism. This theory suggests that consciousness is not something that emerges from matter, but a fundamental feature of the universe, like mass or charge. Under Panpsychism, everything has some form of awareness, even if primitive. A rock isn't thinking, but it may possess a minuscule degree of experiential reality. This view challenges materialism, the dominant scientific worldview that says matter is primary and mind arises from complexity. But materialism has a blind spot. It can't explain how physical processes give rise to subjective experience. This is known as the hard problem of consciousness. Panpsychism sidesteps the problem by positing that consciousness was always present. If that's true, then the universe doesn't generate mind. It is mind in some distributed form. Your brain doesn't create consciousness, it concentrates it. In that case, every act of awareness is not separate from the cosmos, but a local expression of it. Think of waves on an ocean. Each wave is unique, but all are made of the same water. Your mind, then, is a wave on the vast ocean of universal awareness. This view is echoed in ancient traditions and modern physics alike. From Advaita Vedanta to quantum field theory, we find the idea that the boundaries between self and world, subject and object, may be illusions created by perception, and if the boundaries are illusions, then so is the separation between out there and in here. We return once more to the mirror. Maybe the universe doesn't reflect your personal thoughts or feelings directly, but maybe it mirrors the structure of awareness itself. Maybe reality behaves the way it does because awareness behaves the way it does. And maybe every moment of experience is a glimpse, not into an external world, but into a unified field of consciousness expressing itself through form. In this view, physics and psychology are not separate disciplines, but two lenses on the same reality. The patterns you find in neurons and galaxies, in dreams and in dark matter, all arise from a deeper symmetry. Imagine walking through a dense forest. The trees stretch upward like ancient antennae, branches splitting into fractals. Light filters through the leaves in patterns you can't quite explain, but that feel familiar. You step over roots, notice the spiral of a pine cone, the rhythm of your own breath as it syncs with the rustling wind. In this moment, you're not just observing nature, you're part of it. And for a second, it feels as though it's looking back. This sensation, that nature, or even the universe itself, holds some kind of awareness, is ancient. Indigenous traditions around the world speak of the earth as a living being. Philosophers from Plato to Spinoza considered the cosmos to be alive, infused with a kind of intelligence. In the West, we've mostly abandoned that view, trading it for objectivity and control. But now, science is beginning to circle back, not through mysticism, but through systems theory, complexity science, and consciousness studies. Let's look at what it means for a system to be self-organizing. A self-organizing system is one that doesn't need a central controller. It arranges itself spontaneously. Your brain is one, the weather is another, a colony of ants, a flock of birds, an ecosystem. These systems create patterns that emerge from the interactions of parts, not from any single part being in charge. Now apply this to the cosmos. The universe began in a state of high energy and low structure, just a uniform plasma expanding in all directions. But as it cooled, it formed increasingly complex systems: hydrogen, stars, heavier elements, galaxies, solar systems, and eventually, life. All of this without a blueprint, without instructions, and apparently without an architect. This is emergence, and it's a pattern your mind also follows. At birth, your brain is a network of neurons mostly waiting to be shaped by experience. Over time, through sensory input, learning, emotion, and memory, it forms stable structures: beliefs, identities, preferences, languages. These are not imposed from the outside, they emerge from interaction. So here's the connection. Both mind and cosmos evolve through emergence, complexity, and feedback. Both start from simplicity and build toward awareness. And both seem to create models of themselves. Your brain builds internal maps of the world. It does this to navigate space, make decisions, and survive. But the universe, too, seems to reflect itself through fractals, repeating symmetries, and feedback loops. Galaxies mirror each other across vast distances. The large-scale structure of the universe resembles the neural networks that generate thought. But there's more. Let's talk about black holes. Once thought of as cosmic vacuum cleaners, black holes are now understood to be some of the most mysterious objects in existence. When something crosses the event horizon, the boundary around a black hole, it disappears from our observable universe. Yet its information, according to recent theories, might not be lost. It may be encoded on the event horizon itself, as if the black hole stores a kind of hologram of everything it consumes. This leads us to the holographic principle, a theory that suggests the three-dimensional universe you perceive might be a projection from a two-dimensional boundary, like a hologram. This isn't science fiction, it's serious theoretical physics, emerging from attempts to reconcile gravity and quantum mechanics. Now pause and ask yourself, if reality is a hologram, then where is the projector, and what is it projecting onto? More provocatively, if your experience of the universe is a projection, what role does your consciousness play in decoding it? Because your mind, too, takes fragmented signals, light, sound, touch, and reassembles them into a coherent 3D reality. Your brain builds a model and you live inside it, but you forget that it's a model. You think it's the thing itself. This illusion is so complete that you rarely question it. You assume color exists outside of your perception, when it's really just how your brain interprets wavelengths. You assume time flows in a straight line, when it's your memory and expectation that create that flow. You assume that objects are solid, when quantum mechanics tells us they are mostly empty space. So here's a radical idea. Just as black holes may contain holographic information on their boundaries, perhaps your consciousness acts as a kind of event horizon, translating the informational field of the universe into lived experience. And this would mean something profound, that your awareness doesn't just look at the universe, it unfolds it. Let's shift now to language, because language is one of the most powerful tools your mind uses to mirror the world. When you name something, a tree, a planet, an emotion, you create a mental representation of it. You make it graspable. You turn an infinite complexity into a symbol. Language lets you model the world, but it also filters it. The words you use shape how you think. Cultures that lack a future tense often behave more present-focused. Languages with many words for snow lead their speakers to perceive subtle differences in texture and light. What you can name, you can see, but there's a trade-off. Every label is a reduction. When you call something a rock, you ignore its atomic structure, its geological history, its symbolic meaning. You fix it in place with a word, and the living mystery of the thing recedes. This same reduction happens when you name yourself. I am angry. I am successful. I am lost. These statements don't just describe a state, they reinforce it. Your inner world becomes structured through language, and that structure mirrors itself in how you perceive the outer world. And yet, beneath language, beneath all labels, something remains undefined, a presence, a quiet awareness. Could that presence, the part of you that notices without naming, be the same presence reflected back by the cosmos? We now turn to dreams. Dreams are a space where reality bends. You walk through impossible cities. You fly without wings. You talk to people who are alive and dead, sometimes at once. The rules of physics are suspended. Time collapses. Identity shifts. And yet, while dreaming, you often don't realize it's a dream. It feels real because your brain generates a full sensory simulation based on internal information. In dreams, your mind is the universe. It generates landscapes, characters, events, emotions. You are both creator and experiencer. And when you wake up, what remains? A feeling, a symbol, a trace of meaning, sometimes stronger than waking life. Now imagine that waking life is just a more stable dream. A dream governed by consistent rules and persistent memory. Still, it's mediated through the same mind, the same neural hardware, the same subjective filters. And if that's the case, then what separates dream from reality may not be substance, but consistency. One is fragile and fleeting, the other durable and shared. But both are internal experiences. So now we ask, what is real? Philosophers have debated this for millennia. Some argue that only what can be measured is real. Others suggest that reality is only what is experienced. In the age of quantum mechanics and virtual reality, that line becomes increasingly blurry. What if reality is not a fixed thing, but a dynamic process? Not an object, but a relationship. Because every experience you have, sight, sound, thought, emotion, is a product of interaction between you and the world, between the observer and the observed. Nothing exists in experience, in isolation, and so maybe the universe isn't a mirror in the passive sense. Maybe it's an active partner, a responsive field of information and form, constantly reshaped by attention, intention, and awareness. Let's bring in one last concept: resonance. In physics, resonance occurs when one system vibrates at the same frequency as another, amplifying the signal. This happens with tuning forks, with bridges, with atoms, with the human voice. It's a universal principle. Now think about moments in your life when something clicked. A sudden insight, a moment of synchronicity, an unexplainable clarity. These moments often feel like resonance, like something outside of you is harmonizing with something inside. We usually dismiss this as coincidence, but resonance suggests otherwise. It suggests that alignment between inner and outer states can amplify meaning. That when you're in tune with your values, your attention, and your environment, reality becomes more vivid, more fluid. This might not be magic, it might be physics. Your mind, after all, is a pattern of electrical and chemical oscillations. Your brain waves have measurable frequencies. Your cells vibrate, your thoughts ripple across a field of neural resonance. Perhaps when those frequencies harmonize with external patterns, natural rhythms, social energy, even cosmic cycles, you experience coherence. And coherence feels like truth. So maybe the universe is not just mirroring your thoughts. Maybe it's echoing your frequency. Maybe what you call intuition or alignment is a form of harmonic feedback between your consciousness and the informational field that underlies everything. And that field, whether we call it space-time, the zero-point field, or the quantum vacuum, is never silent. It's vibrating everywhere, always. So when you look up at the night sky and you feel a flicker of connection, a sensation you can't name, that might not be a projection of your emotions, that might be recognition, a resonance between what you are and what everything is. The deeper you look into the structure of the universe, the stranger it becomes. What appears solid begins to dissolve into fields and probabilities. At the smallest scales, matter stops behaving like matter at all. Electrons don't orbit atoms like planets. They exist as clouds of potential. Subatomic particles pop in and out of existence. Reality, when closely examined, is not made of things. It's made of relationships. This is the insight of quantum field theory, that particles are not little building blocks, but ripples in invisible fields that span the universe. Each field corresponds to a kind of particle, an electron field, a photon field, a Higgs field. Where there's a ripple, there's a particle. Where there's no ripple, there's emptiness. But even emptiness, it turns out, is not empty. In quantum mechanics, the vacuum is a seething foam of activity. Virtual particles appear, interact, and vanish within fractions of a second. This underlying sea of energy is called the zero-point field, and it's thought to be the foundation of all physical reality. Now consider your mind. It too is not a static object. It's a dynamic field of patterns, of rising and falling thoughts, memories, emotions. These mental events appear, shift, and disappear with the same unpredictability as quantum fluctuations. You are not a single, unchanging identity. You are a process, a flow of awareness passing through states, sensations, and stories. And just as quantum fields are affected by the presence of particles, your consciousness is shaped by experience, attention, and feedback. So what if awareness itself is a kind of field? What if your thoughts are like particles, momentary excitations of a deeper, continuous presence? This idea shows up in both neuroscience and contemplative traditions. In neuroscience, some models describe consciousness as an emergent property of integrated information. Patterns spread across the brain, synchronizing in waves. In meditation traditions, awareness is described as a clear, formless field that thoughts rise and fall within, like ripples on a still pond. Now place those two views side by side, one from science, one from introspection. They point to the same structure, mind as a field, thought as motion, self as process. In that light, the cosmos doesn't just reflect your thoughts metaphorically, it reflects their structure. Both the brain and the universe are fields embedded in larger fields, resonating with patterns of emergence. This brings us to the nature of self. Most of the time, you experience yourself as a discrete individual, a you behind the eyes, a narrator, a center point. But that sense of self, stable and solid, is, in truth, constructed. Studies in neuroscience show that your brain creates the illusion of a singular identity by integrating multiple processes. visual information, emotional responses, sensory feedback, autobiographical memory. When these elements synchronize, you feel like you. When they fall out of sync, during trauma, meditation, or certain neurological conditions, that sense of self can dissolve. This doesn't mean the self is fake, it means it's fluid. And if your sense of self is a pattern, not a thing, then it resembles other natural patterns, like whirlpools in a river. The water keeps changing, but the shape holds. Your identity is a similar whirlpool in the stream of experience. The universe may work the same way. It's not made of permanent substances, but of temporary structures. Atoms, molecules, stars, galaxies, appearing within a cosmic flow. And some of those structures gain enough complexity to become aware of themselves, to look around, to wonder, to ask if the universe is looking back. Let's bring in another dimension, mathematics. Mathematics is the language of nature. The spiral of a seashell follows the Fibonacci sequence. The orbit of planets obeys Kepler's laws. The behavior of particles maps to complex equations. From the smallest quark to the largest galaxy, mathematics describes how things move, interact, and evolve. But here's the mystery. Where do these mathematical truths exist? Did we invent them or discover them? No one taught the universe to follow equations, and yet it does, with uncanny precision. This raises a profound question. Is mathematics a property of the universe or of the mind? Because every equation, every calculation, every model is generated by consciousness. Your brain uses mathematics to describe patterns, but those patterns were there before you arrived. So which came first? The pattern or the mind that sees it? Maybe they arise together. This is where we return to the idea of the mirror, not a passive reflection, but an interdependent loop. You see pattern in the universe because you are made of pattern. You find symmetry in nature because your brain is symmetrical. You discover equations that map reality because reality shaped the mind that wrote them. As above, so below. Now consider the brain's remarkable capacity for abstraction. Your mind can hold concepts that don't physically exist. Infinity, justice, nothingness, parallel dimensions. Your thoughts extend far beyond your immediate surroundings. You can imagine other worlds, other lives, other versions of yourself. You can mentally model a universe that stretches beyond the observable edge of space. This ability, abstract modeling, is a defining trait of consciousness, and it mirrors how the universe itself behaves, because the cosmos too appears to contain realities beyond direct observation. Dark matter, dark energy, theoretical dimensions curled up in string theory. These are not seen, but inferred. Much like emotions, intentions, and beliefs in other people. You don't see them, you detect them through patterns. And in both cases, cosmic and personal, your models are never perfect, but they are useful. They guide exploration, they open questions, they make the invisible visible. Now imagine that the universe, at its deepest level, is composed not of particles, but of information. This is not speculation, it's the direction many physicists are now moving. Information theory is increasingly used to describe black holes, quantum mechanics, even space and time. If everything is information, then reality is not substance, but code. Not matter, but logic, and consciousness may be the decoding function. The interpreter, the one that turns pure possibility into experience. This flips the traditional view. Instead of a material universe giving rise to awareness, You have a universe that exists as awareness interpreting itself through informational structures. In this view, consciousness is not rare. It's not an accident, it's the rule. And your particular experience, this moment, this perception, this question, is one facet of the universe knowing itself. Not metaphorically, literally. Now return to the mirror. Not the kind you look into, but the kind that reflects relationship. Think of how quantum entanglement works. Two particles, once connected, remain linked across distance. Measure one, and the other responds instantly, no matter how far apart they are. This non-locality challenges the idea that space separates things, and it hints at something deeper, that everything may be connected below the surface. Your thoughts, then, may not be isolated events in a private mind. They may ripple across fields of consciousness, resonating with other minds, other systems. Your joy, your fear, your clarity. They may be part of a larger pattern, a network of awareness spread across space and time. You've felt this, haven't you? In moments of intuition, in sudden connection with strangers, in the way music moves a crowd, in the timing of events that feel too precise to be coincidence. We don't yet have instruments to measure these resonances, but absence of proof is not proof of absence. The ancient idea that consciousness pervades the universe may not be mystical at all. It may be the simplest explanation that the reason the universe appears meaningful is because meaning is embedded in it. That you experience connection because connection is real. That you find order because order is intrinsic. And that perhaps the universe is conscious, not like a person, but like a process. A dynamic, self-reflective system that includes you. Your awareness is not observing the universe from the outside. It is a node in the system. A mirror reflecting another mirror in infinite regress. Which brings us to the final question for tonight. If the universe is a mirror of your mind, then what do you see when you look deeply into it? Not stars, not equations. You see yourself. There's a quiet revolution happening in science. For centuries, the dominant view was that the universe is purely physical. A cold, mechanical system governed by impersonal laws. Matter, force, space, time, all of it ticking like a vast cosmic clock. But now, a new idea is emerging. One that doesn't replace science, but extends it. One that suggests the universe isn't just out there, it's in here too. Not only measurable, but meaningful. And the key to understanding it may lie within your own consciousness. Let's begin with information. In physics, information isn't just data. It's a fundamental quantity, on par with mass and energy. When something happens in the universe, information changes. And according to the laws of thermodynamics, that information can never be truly destroyed. Even if a star collapses into a black hole, its information is still encoded somewhere. Perhaps on the black hole's surface, as Stephen Hawking and others proposed. This means everything that has ever happened still exists in some form, not just as particles, but as relationships, as patterns of difference. The universe is not just made of stuff, it's made of distinctions. It remembers. Now think about your mind. It too is made of information, memories, beliefs, impressions, feelings. These are not stored like files in a cabinet. They're embedded in neural patterns, distributed across the brain. And they too are never truly destroyed. Even forgotten memories can leave imprints, shaping behavior, mood, personality. So both mind and universe can be seen as evolving informational systems. One large, one small, one objective, one subjective, but both structured around the same principles: transformation, encoding, retrieval. This parallel has led some scientists to propose a radical idea that the universe functions like a computer, not a laptop or smartphone, but a fundamental kind of computation, where every interaction between particles is a kind of logic gate, and where the entire evolution of reality is a vast calculation unfolding over time. This concept is known as digital physics. It suggests that reality is not continuous, but discrete, like pixels on a screen or bits in a processor. And your experience, then, is like a rendered image, built from the interaction of informational units. Now ask yourself, if the universe processes information, and your brain processes information, and both systems are structured to evolve through feedback and complexity, what separates them? One answer is scale, but scale alone doesn't imply separation. Fractals show us that patterns repeat at different magnitudes. A fern leaf mirrors the whole plant. A coastline looks similar whether seen from space or a drone. Perhaps your consciousness is a microcosmic reflection of a greater field, an echo of the informational architecture of the cosmos. This leads us to the principle of self-similarity. Self-similarity means the part resembles the whole. You find it in nature, in mathematics, in biology, in weather systems. The branching of neurons mimics the branching of lightning, rivers, blood vessels. The way your lungs expand and contract mirrors planetary cycles of inhalation and exhalation, wind, tides, seasons. So if the universe expresses itself through repeating patterns, and your mind operates through those same patterns, then maybe you are not just in the universe. You are a local expression of it. Let's explore memory. Human memory is not like a recording, it's reconstructive. When you recall something, your brain rebuilds it using scattered fragments, associations, emotional tone. And the more you remember it, the more it changes. This might seem unreliable, but it's actually adaptive. Your memories evolve with you. They reflect who you are becoming, not just who you were. Now think cosmically. The universe also contains memory, not as emotion, but as structure. The shape of galaxies, the distribution of matter, the chemical composition of stars. All of it reflects a history. The early universe had no heavy elements. Those came later from the deaths of stars. Every atom in your body was forged in that stellar evolution. You are made of cosmic memory. So when you reflect, when you remember, when you dream, you are performing a gesture that the universe also performs. Encoding, reconstructing, evolving. This is not poetry, this is physics meeting cognition. And now we come to emotion. At first glance, emotion seems purely biological. Hormones, neurotransmitters, primal survival responses. But emotion also shapes perception, attention, memory, behavior. It organizes your experience of the world. Without emotion, nothing would matter. Everything would be neutral, flat. Emotion gives dimension to reality. It colors it, charges it, directs it. And this affective dimension may mirror something deeper. In recent years, physicists and philosophers have begun asking whether the fundamental forces of the universe, like gravity and electromagnetism, are the only kinds of fields that exist. What if consciousness, or even something like meaning, is also a kind of field? Not material, not energetic, but causal. capable of influencing structure, just like emotion does within the mind. This sounds abstract, but consider, when you're in emotional coherence, when your heart and mind are aligned, your decisions become clearer, your attention sharpens, your body feels balanced. This isn't magic, it's measurable. Heart rate variability, brainwave synchronization, hormonal regulation. So what if the universe seeks coherence too? Not emotional, but structural, energetic, informational. The cosmos moves towards states of balance, not stasis, but dynamic equilibrium. Stars burn until they collapse. Galaxies swirl until they settle. Systems emerge, evolve, dissolve. Like breath, like thought. This mirrors your inner life. You seek balance. You swing between extremes. You recalibrate. This rhythm of tension and release, contraction and expansion is not unique to biology. It is universal. Now let's consider attention. Attention is your most powerful tool. Where you place it determines what you experience. Your brain can't process everything, so it filters. And your filter is shaped by what matters to you. You train your attention through repetition, through intention, through curiosity. And in this, you are participating in a feedback loop. What you attend to grows stronger. Neural connections reinforce. Patterns stabilize. You literally shape your brain through focus. What if the universe responds similarly? Not in a conscious human way, but through resonance. Systems that receive input respond. Fields that are disturbed oscillate. Attention may act as a kind of tuning mechanism, one that aligns your internal state with specific external conditions. This doesn't mean you manifest events by thinking about them. It means that your perception attunes you to certain possibilities, and those possibilities shape your path. You're not altering the universe, you're selecting from it, and in doing so, you mirror its structure. Let's bring in entropic equilibrium. Entropy in physics measures disorder. Left alone, systems tend toward chaos. But life resists this. Your body, your mind, they work to maintain order, coherence, structure. This requires energy, effort, focus. And it's the same with the universe. While entropy increases overall, local systems like stars, planets, life, form pockets of order. These pockets delay entropy. They create meaning, structure, complexity. You are one of those pockets. Your awareness is not a passive flame flickering in the wind. It's a force that organizes experience, resists noise, and makes sense of chaos. And in this, you echo the universe's own impulse to structure itself. So when you ask, is the universe a mirror of my mind? The answer may be more literal than you think. Not in the sense that it shares your personal thoughts, but in the sense that it shares your architecture, your logic, your rhythm, your desire for meaning. Let's finish with vision. When light hits your eyes, you don't just see photons, you see trees, faces, stars. Your mind builds images, it imposes form, it extracts structure from chaos. And it does so with such speed and subtlety that you never notice the construction happening. Reality arrives fully assembled, but this process is bidirectional. Your expectations shape what you see, your memories fill in gaps, your beliefs color edges. You don't see reality as it is, you see it as you are. And the universe, too, presents itself through filters. Not optical, but energetic, gravitational, temporal. We only see part of the electromagnetic spectrum. We only perceive one direction of time. We only interact with a fraction of what exists. So what is the true face of the universe? We don't know, but perhaps it doesn't have one. Perhaps, like your mind, the universe is not a static image, but a process of becoming, co-created by the observer and the observed. And that would mean that consciousness isn't the end of evolution. It's its frontier. If the universe is a process of becoming, then your consciousness may be the most refined tool it has for examining itself. Through your awareness, the universe gains perspective. Through your thoughts, it simulates possibilities. Through your questions, it refines its own order. And yet, this idea of a reflective, participatory cosmos is not entirely new. It appears again and again in different forms across cultures and disciplines. In quantum physics, the observer plays a critical role. A system remains in a superposition, a blur of all possible states, until it is measured. Observation collapses the wave function, but what exactly qualifies as an observer? Is it a conscious mind, a machine, a physical interaction? Physicists don't fully agree, but the paradox is clear. At the smallest scales, the act of observation changes what is observed. This is not just metaphor, it's mathematical. Experiments like the double-slit test reveal that particles behave differently depending on whether they're being watched. When unobserved, they behave like waves, smearing out across space. When measured, they behave like particles, choosing a definite path. This suggests that potential becomes actual through interaction. Possibility becomes reality through awareness. Your mind operates in much the same way. Your future is not fixed. It exists as a field of probabilities, some more likely than others, all shaped by your history, your habits, your choices. When you direct your attention toward a specific path, that path becomes more probable, not through magic, but through momentum. Decision carves the wave function. Action collapses uncertainty. Your life takes shape by where you focus. So again, the structure of mind mirrors the structure of matter. Quantum mechanics describes the universe as a field of potential, uncertain, fluctuating, but responsive to observation. And consciousness can be seen as a similar field, fluid, multidimensional, filled with potential paths waiting to be enacted. Now consider symmetry. In physics, symmetry is not just visual balance, it's a fundamental property. Laws of conservation are tied to symmetries. Energy is conserved because the laws of physics are the same over time. Momentum is conserved because they're the same in space. Charge is conserved due to another symmetry entirely. This is known as Noether's theorem, a profound discovery linking symmetry and conservation. In your mind, symmetry also plays a role. You seek balance between logic and emotion, between past and future, between self and other. When your inner world becomes too unbalanced, too rigid, too chaotic, you suffer. Anxiety, depression, confusion. Healing often comes through restoring symmetry, reconnecting left and right brain, realigning belief and behavior, harmonizing desire with discipline. So symmetry governs both stars and psyches, not just as a visual concept, but as a dynamic principle, where balance gives rise to stability and imbalance leads to transformation. This leads us to systems thinking. The universe is not a collection of isolated parts. It's an interconnected web. Galaxies form clusters, planets orbit stars. Atoms combine into molecules, which form cells, organs, bodies, minds. Every level contains feedback loops, thresholds, emergent properties. Likewise, your mind is a nested system. Thoughts influence emotions, which affect behavior, which alters your environment, which feeds back into thought. Your identity is not fixed, it's dynamic, constructed moment by moment from a shifting network of patterns. The same principles that govern ecological systems govern your psychology. Self-regulation, interdependence, adaptation, emergence. And when a system becomes too unstable, it undergoes phase transition. In physics, this might mean water freezing into ice or boiling into steam. In your life, it might mean a mental breakdown or a breakthrough. A sudden realization that rewires how you perceive everything, a reordering of identity, a rebirth. These transformations often feel chaotic, but they are also lawful. The system reorganizes around new attractors, new patterns that hold it together. And these patterns emerge from deep within the structure. You are not separate from the laws of nature, you are a law of nature, conscious, embodied, evolving. Now let's explore emergence more deeply. Emergence is when a complex system displays behavior not present in its individual parts. A single neuron doesn't think, but billions of them, organized a certain way, give rise to thought. A single water molecule doesn't create a wave, but millions moving together generate motion, rhythm, power. Consciousness may be an emergent property of the brain or of the universe itself. Some physicists argue that consciousness arises when information integrates across a complex system. This is known as integrated information theory. It suggests that any system with enough internal differentiation and communication may possess some degree of awareness. Your mind is an emergent property, but so is weather, so is traffic, so is language, music, culture. The self too may be emergent, not a fixed thing, but a pattern that persists over time, a coherence across memories and intentions. And if the universe mirrors the mind, then perhaps it too has emergent identity. Not human, not personal, but conscious nonetheless, not in the way you think, but in the way it thinks you into being. Let's talk about scale relativity. The laws of physics hold across scales, but their effects change. Gravity governs galaxies, but also your feet on the floor. Electromagnetism shapes atoms, but also your thoughts via neural electricity. You exist at a specific scale, between the subatomic and the galactic, and yet you contain echoes of both. Your atoms were born in stars. Your DNA evolved from ancient cells. Your dreams may span galaxies. This position between scales gives you a unique perspective. You are small enough to notice detail, but large enough to imagine the whole. You can zoom in and zoom out, not physically, but mentally. This capacity is itself a kind of symmetry, and when you meditate or contemplate deeply or drift into sleep, you often feel this. A merging of scales, a sense that the tiny events of your life are somehow connected to vast forces, that your thoughts ripple beyond your skull, that your being matters, not in the narcissistic sense, but in the structural one. You are part of the pattern, and the pattern is part of you. This takes us into resonance. Resonance occurs when a system vibrates in harmony with another. A tuning fork makes another fork sing. A bridge shakes with marching soldiers. Your emotions resonate with music, with voice, with silence. Brainwaves synchronize with rhythm. Heartbeats sync with breathing. Groups of people enter shared resonance through chanting, dancing, dialogue. This isn't superstition, it's physics. Coupled oscillators seek harmony. Now consider this. If your mind and the universe share structural patterns, then perhaps your consciousness can resonate with cosmic frequencies, not literally like a radio, but in terms of meaning, purpose, alignment. When you feel inspired, grounded, in flow, perhaps you are resonating with a deeper order. When you feel scattered, numb, dissonant, perhaps you are out of tune. The idea isn't mystical, it's biological, it's systemic. The mind, like the universe, seeks coherence. And when coherence arises, insight emerges. Solutions appear. You feel connected, not just to others, but to something vast and quiet and intelligent. This is the mirror, not a reflection of your ego, but a reflection of form, of structure, of law. You are not the center of the universe, but you may be its expression, just as a wave is the expression of an ocean. Let's close this part with one final idea: recursion. Recursion is when a system refers to itself, a story within a story, a mirror reflecting a mirror. Your mind does this constantly. You think about your thoughts, you imagine imagining, you reflect on reflection. This capacity for self-reference may be what makes you conscious. And perhaps the universe does this too. Perhaps consciousness is how the universe reflects on itself. Perhaps it becomes aware only through systems like you, recursive, reflective, capable of asking, "What am I?" You are not separate from the pattern. You are the pattern becoming aware. The question is no longer whether the universe mirrors your mind. The question is, what kind of mirror do you want to be? Your mind is not a container. It's not a box filled with thoughts, emotions, and memories. It's a process, dynamic, active, constantly shaping and reshaping itself. And when you look at the universe through that lens, not as a static place, but as a process, something strange begins to happen. The boundaries between internal and external, subject and object, begin to blur. The mirror starts to reflect both directions at once. Let's revisit the concept of pattern. The universe, at every level, seems to be organized by patterns. Spirals, fractals, branching systems. Galaxies swirl in spiral arms. Hurricanes curve in the same shapes. Trees branch in Fibonacci sequences, as do rivers, lungs, lightning, neural pathways. These patterns are not accidents. They're solutions, efficient ways to move energy, distribute information, adapt to constraints. Evolution favors them, physics enables them, mathematics describes them, and your mind is full of them. Your thoughts follow neural paths, some well-worn, some freshly blazed. These paths shape how you interpret reality. Beliefs are patterns, emotions are patterns, habits are patterns. Identity is the most persistent pattern of all, a set of self-reinforcing loops you mistake for a solid thing. But you are not the pattern. You are the field in which the pattern arises. Just as matter arises in space, mind arises in awareness. And awareness itself, what is it? A mirror with no content, until something appears, a thought, a sound, a memory, a star. The mirror reflects it briefly, and it passes. The philosopher Douglas Hofstadter explored this in terms of strange loops. A strange loop is a self-referential structure that loops back on itself. You find them in logic, in music, in consciousness. I is a strange loop. It's the system looking at itself, thinking it is a thing, but it's not a thing. It's a pattern of patterns, a process aware of its own processes. and the universe seems to be filled with strange loops. Black holes curve space so tightly they become loops of gravity. Time, in certain models of cosmology, may loop back on itself. DNA replicates through feedback loops. Consciousness is recursive, always turning inward. In this way, your awareness is not separate from the universe. It's how the universe loops back to observe itself. Now let's look at information. According to many physicists, information is the most fundamental substance in the universe, more fundamental than matter or energy. Theoretical frameworks like digital physics propose that the universe operates like a vast computational structure, not metaphorically, literally. Bits of information govern every particle's position, spin, and state. Entropy, a measure of disorder, is also a measure of information. Black holes, once thought to erase everything that falls into them, are now believed to store all that information on their surface. This leads to the holographic principle, the idea that the universe is fundamentally a two-dimensional structure projected into three dimensions, like a hologram. Every point in space contains the encoded information of the whole. Like a fractal, like a mind, when you remember something, you're not retrieving a static file, you're reconstructing it, drawing from distributed patterns across your neural net. Each memory is a partial hologram, containing the whole in compressed form. Your sense of self is built on that process, integrating distributed data into a coherent narrative, and perhaps reality does something similar. Maybe what we experience as now is the universe's reconstruction of its own past states. Maybe your awareness of time is a cognitive version of what space-time does on a cosmic scale. Time itself is an illusion, some physicists argue, a dimension, not a flow. What we call the present may be a moving spotlight across a fixed landscape. Past, present, and future all coexist. But your consciousness moves through it, like a lens scanning a film strip. This again reflects the relationship between inner and outer reality. Your mind, like the universe, is not confined to a single moment. It processes history. It predicts the future. It models possibilities. The structure of thought maps to the structure of time. Let's talk about chaos and order. At first glance, the universe seems chaotic. Stars explode, planets collide, galaxies devour one another. But beneath the chaos is order. Gravity keeps orbits stable. Thermodynamics governs energy flow. Quantum mechanics dances in probabilistic rhythm. Your mind works the same way. Thoughts appear unpredictable. Emotions fluctuate. Desires conflict. But deeper patterns emerge. Your personality stabilizes. Your values persist. Even your confusion follows rules. Cognitive biases, emotional conditioning, evolutionary tendencies. Chaos is not the opposite of order. It's order you haven't understood yet. Fractal geometry showed us this. What looks like randomness, a coastline, a cloud, a heartbeat, often reveals deep structure when examined properly. Your life may feel chaotic, but zoom out and patterns emerge. Repeating themes, recurring lessons, hidden symmetries. In chaos theory, there's something called the sensitive dependence on initial conditions, also known as the butterfly effect. A tiny change at the beginning leads to massive differences later. One choice ripples forward. One thought alters the trajectory. Your mind operates like this. So does the universe. In both, small causes can create large effects. Insight leads to transformation. A question changes a worldview. A shift in attention rewires your brain. So what happens when attention itself becomes the focus? Mindfulness, meditation, contemplative practices, they're all tools for examining attention. You start noticing where your awareness goes. You begin to steer it. You observe your own patterns, and in doing so, you change them. This is consciousness turning inward, the mirror looking at itself. And at the same time, you start to see the world differently, not just as a collection of objects, but as a field of relationships, of unfolding events, of information patterns interacting. The same way a physicist looks at particles or a systems thinker maps feedback loops. Your inner clarity reflects outward. The more coherent your awareness, the more meaningful the world appears. This isn't magic, it's structure. When your internal model aligns with external reality, you experience flow, synchrony, insight, because the mind and the world share a grammar. Let's examine perception. You don't perceive reality directly, you perceive models. Your brain filters input, fills in gaps, constructs meaning. Optical illusions prove this. So do cognitive distortions. Your eyes see, but your mind interprets. The universe does something similar through natural laws. At every level, systems interpret input and generate output. Cells receive signals and react. Ecosystems adjust. Black holes take in mass and emit radiation. The entire cosmos is a network of perception and response. In a very real sense, perception is a universal property, not just of minds, but of matter itself. And meaning may emerge from the alignment of these perceptions. When your interpretation resonates with reality, it feels true. When it diverges, it feels false or incoherent. This isn't just psychological, it's structural. Coherence between levels of reality creates stability. When physicists discover a new law, they're not imposing meaning, they're recognizing a pattern, a resonance between mind and matter. And when you understand something deeply, the feeling of insight is not just mental, it's physical, neural synchrony, hormonal balance, emotional alignment. The mirror reflects back understanding. Now consider language. Language is not just a tool, it's a map. Every word compresses vast experience. Tree evokes smell, shape, memory, biology, mythology. Language is a code, and like all codes, it reflects the structure of what it encodes. Your internal monologue, the way you talk to yourself, shapes your reality. Words are not just labels, they are instructions. Say, "I am lost" enough times, and your mind organizes around that identity. Say, "I am learning," and it does the same. And the universe, some say, is built from a kind of language. Mathematical equations describe everything from orbits to quarks. Information is encoded in physical states, and perhaps consciousness is the grammar that interprets it. The mirror of the mind and the mirror of the cosmos are both written in code, and you, as a conscious being, are both interpreter and author. So what do you want to write? Let's finish this part with imagination. Imagination is not fantasy, it's simulation. Your mind builds models of what could be. It tests possibilities. It envisions outcomes. This is what enables science, art, ethics, choice.
And perhaps the universe does this too.
Evolution is a kind of imagination. It tries variations, sees what survives. Quantum systems explore possibilities, collapse into realities. Galaxies form, collide, reshape. creativity isn't exclusive to humans, it's built into the structure of becoming.